Welcome to Let's Play Battlefield 1942. Today's episode, Operation Market Garden. This is one of the maps on the Western Front between the Americans and the Germans. It takes place in a large grassy field with a river and a couple of bridges. Although the historic Operation Market Garden was a scenario where the Allies were trying to capture some key bridges. On this map, it's really the Germans who have to capture the bridges because the Germans have an uncapturable base on the other side of the river, and they have to get across the bridges and get into these flags. There's 4 flags just north of the river, and there's also an uncapturable base that you just saw, an uncapturable spawn point that I just parachuted in from. It's one of the rare ones where the Allies always have the ability to parachute in from a particular point. And here at the church flag that I've just left, you have the Allies' only 2 tanks. On this map, the Allies have a couple of planes and the Germans have no planes, whereas the Germans have a lot more tanks than the Allies do. So that's kind of the balance they're running. And if the Allied side has really good pilots, it can become a real advantage for the Allies to have planes rather than tanks. The Germans always start this round, they bring in their tanks over this main bridge here, and they've managed to capture that control point at least. That's the one good thing about what they've done. You just never want to be in that scenario where you have no flags on the German side and the Americans are defending all of them. Because the bleed takes you down and it just takes a long time to get across the bridges. And the Americans can do a pretty good job of defending both of them. I'm going to make a tactical withdrawal over here. You really don't want to be in a position where you're going heads up against a Tiger tank, which is what that one was. The Tiger tanks have more hit points than the American Sherman tanks, which is the type of tank that I'm driving. So if you're going to succeed at all, you're going to come in from a flanking position. Earlier in the map, just team killed somebody there. Earlier in the map, I was attacking the German tanks that were coming across that bridge from a side position. They really didn't see me down here. That's why I was able to get so many good hits on them. And the flag I'm approaching now is the Stone Bridge. It's the only other bridge that the Germans have to get across. It's just a small little bridge. It's easily defended by landmines or explosive packs that the engineers carry. One interesting point about that Stone Bridge flag, though, is that you can defend it by standing underneath the bridge, and it can be extremely difficult for enemies to capture it if they're only bringing in tanks, because the tanks can't maneuver underneath that bridge. The Germans have now managed to capture the church flag, and as I said before, it's the flag that spawns the Allies' only 2 tanks. So it's, in my opinion, by far the most important flag. Now I could go after the flag instead, but I think I'll just kill that guy because he insulted me earlier in the chat. And yeah, you can neutralize this flag from a lot of different positions, but this is another flag that's very easy for the infantry to defend against tanks. You can hold this flag neutral by remaining within the church. In fact, you can stay upstairs in the church and use dynamite packs to defend against infantry too. That's one easy way that you can just really screw the other team over by preventing them from taking that flag unless they invade the church on foot. Now, I didn't have to do that because this time I guess they got killed so quickly they didn't have time to set up a proper infantry defense. spawning in just at that stone bridge flag. It has a relatively small spawn radius, and it's pretty easy for an enemy tank to just camp you to death. And that's what I definitely prefer to do if the tank's attacking that position, because it's very difficult for the tank to maneuver around in there and capture that flag if the infantry hide on the other side. But if you camp the flag for a bit, just kill them as they're spawning in, it dissuades them from continuing to spawn in there, and you have a much better chance of capturing the flag, especially if you have some infantry help. In this case, though, the Germans don't have any other flags other than their main base, which they don't want to spawn at because it's way on the other side of the river. Now that guy just rammed me with his Jeep. Intentionally or not, I don't know, but if it was intentional, it was a good idea. It's much better to trade a Jeep for a tank than to just try to get past with a Jeep. One good strategy that you can use Jeeps for on this map, though, is to just try to go past all of the Allied defenders and make a play for the church flag.
Position secured.
Most of the action usually takes place at these two flags right here, the ones that are gray at the moment. Those are the two city flags. There are a lot of different places for infantry to hide, and very large capture radiuses so they can stay neutral for a long period of time. And they're also good positions to attack the other flags from. Alright, so what we're looking at now is a pretty standard configuration in this map, where the Germans have one flag, they're contesting maybe another one, and the Allies have maintained control of the church, so they can keep getting those tanks.
Position secured.
But it's still not a very good position for the Axis to be in, because if they get unlucky, the Allies manage to capture a couple flags, Axis gets stuck at spawning in at one flag and they can be penned in there. It's very important for the Axis to keep bringing up the tanks from their main base, but people are so lazy that they just don't want to go to all the trouble. One other important note is that the Axis are bleeding tickets right now. Even though they had one flag, and normally on maps where you have to really make a play to capture something, you don't have ticket bleed once you've done it. This is a standard 2 control points map, or 2 uncapturable bases map. So if you hold a majority of the flags, then you inflict ticket bleed. There are 4 flags, so you've got to do 3 out of 4, which is a bit tougher than, you know, your standard, let's say, a 5 flag map where you only need 3 out of 5 or 2 out of 3. You got to have 3 out of the 4. Stay tuned for part 2.